Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our special Empire Masterclass show. As I mentioned earlier, if you came in just before then, it is our bonus show. So we decided to throw a few different things into the mix for October, as it is Mental Health Month. And I suppose earlier this month, I believe it was the 10th of October. Probably wasn't publicised as much as personally I would like, but certainly it was World Mental Health Day. My name is Paul Jantz, in case you don't know who I am, and you're in for a little bit of a treat. We are here thanks to professional partners, education, and our supporters at Hall Chadwick, iKeep, Profit Master, and Lloyd's Auctioneers. Now, before we kick off, let me share some stats, and I'm going to go just bear with me for 3 minutes as I talk a little bit about this, and I'll introduce you to our panelists. So look, the stats and the statistics probably don't lie. That's why I want to share these with you. And prior to COVID-19, we had 1 in 5 Australians suffer from mental health issues. Today, we've got more than 2 in 5 Australians aged between 16 and 85 that are struggling or experiencing a mental disorder. It's a staggering 8.6 million people. And you know the numbers are, in my opinion, are probably only going to grow. And that's why the more that we can do to probably create more awareness is probably the key thing around this. And we're going to go through quite a number of things today. Now, also, it's only my opinion and my belief, but I believe that all of us have suffered or are suffering from some sort of trauma, whether that be from the past, the present. Unfortunately, it's a part of our life, and they're the sort of things that we need to be able to cope better. There's challenges. I think life is like that. As soon as you feel like things are heading in a nice direction, bang, you get thrown another challenge in life, and that's what it's about. But it's about how we can cope with that. And hopefully today you're going to be able to hear from 3 of our experts that can also share those little things with you so you can get onto a better path. For me personally, look, I've been down that road, marriage breakdown, 3 young boys, going through a messy divorce, losing all my assets and rebuilding after. It's been a tough space for me over the last 4 or 5 years as well, hence why I enjoy doing what I'm doing now, and I want to be able to share this and continually shed a light on how we can continue to cope with this, because sometimes we get into a dark place and sometimes we can't get out of it. So, certainly personally for me, it was about a strong network of friends. And when I say a strong network of friends, I'm now very conscious of who could be toxic in my life, whether that be in a work situation or a personal situation. And I certainly cut out anything that's toxic, anything that's going to be energy zapping, and I associate myself with really good people that have got good energy. So I think that's been really important to me. So there's just a little bit about just a framework around that, because I think it's really important, that I wanted to share that. I know one of our panelists, Lillian, and I did a push-up challenge. This is how it all started for me. We worked on our guns, didn't we, Lillian? Oh, yeah. And that was the first sign to me giving back. We were in lockdown 2021, 2022, June. We had to push out 3,139 push-ups in 24 days in the month of June. So it certainly wasn't fun, that's for sure. And I think every part of your body was aching, but it was all about the suicide rates, and it was all built around the 3,139 number, which was the suicide rate in 2020. So again, anything that we can do and anything you can do that you can continue to share and raise awareness, I think is a good thing. So, sort of Rochelle and I actually spoke about this even at the start, just, we hope all of the people that are registered are coming on, and at the end of the day, doing something is better than doing nothing. And again, that's what we're here to try and share that with you. Let me tell you about the sorts of things we're going to talk about today. So our 3 amazing leaders in this field are going to share their insights and knowledge. We're going to talk about the conditions. We're going to talk about signs. We're going to talk about messaging. We're going to talk about the advice, and probably, if anything, how we can chat about our everyday lives. It's a funny thing, and I'll talk about, again, I've got 3 young boys, as I mentioned before. So having those open conversations about certain things and how we feel, and I know Rochelle will go into a little bit more about her emotions journey as well, is really, really important. I think, as I'll call myself a modern day parent, I think it's important to empower certainly young men to become better men. And that's something that I want to continue to do. And I think it is something that we can continue to talk about. Now, I have put this together very, very quickly. I know the invitation only went out probably 10 days ago. If you've got any questions, we will have time for questions at the end of this. So it'll run for about 50 minutes. I've only got Jane for 30 minutes. So I need to get moving here. It's probably less. I probably got you for 27. So if you've got any questions, throw them into the Q&A bar or the chat bar, please. Let me introduce you to our amazing panel, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well as we get around. So I've got Jane Burns, I've got Lillian Nejad, and I've got Rochelle Rich. Thank you for joining us, ladies. We're here to talk about mental health. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
Very well. And I see we colour coordinated, Paul.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? Yeah, so we talked about that. We spoke about that last night.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, to kick off with, Rochelle, I might let you go first, and maybe just a quick little around the grounds, as we call it, a quick little 30 seconds, 60 seconds about yourself. That'd be fantastic. So everyone online actually knows who you are.
Sure, thanks. Hi, Paul, and thanks for the intro. It's a pleasure to join you here today. My journey started off with a really tragic story. And before I shared the basis of it, I'd just like to start with, if any of our conversations today bring up anything internally, Lifeline's phone number is 131114. Really good resource. They're available 24/7, just in case. And my story begins with that number that you shared, 3,129 people who died in 2020. And my date was a family member on the 17th of May, 2020, died from suicide. And I also personally experienced postnatal depression in 2018. And I can tell you the crippling effects of what mental health can do. And it started off this journey of how can we improve the situation? And that's where Emotions was born. 50% of our profits are donated to support 3 partner charities, Beyond Blue, Lifeline, and Black Dog Institute. And they're wrapped in emotions charts. And these products are things like toilet paper, paper towels, things that we're using every day to get that message out. I'll keep it really simple for now because you said a 60-second intro, but I'll touch on a bit more later on.
Absolutely. Who wants to go next? How about you, Jane? We'll get to you.
Absolutely happy to. So my story is different to Rochelle's. I started as an academic back in the late 90s. Focus was on suicide prevention. Very quickly realised I was not cut out to be an academic at all. So went across and did the startup of Beyond Blue with Ian Hickey. And that was back in 2000. My first partnership was with the AFL. And you think back to then, 22 years ago, people just weren't talking about mental health at all. So there was, without doubt, extreme stigma. Fast forward, I've led a cooperative research centre focused on young people tech and wellbeing. I support a lot of the veterans' mental health and wellbeing work. I chair Rochelle's Emotions, fabulous organisation, and have, I suppose, dedicated my life to not just raising awareness about mental health issues, but actually challenging the way in which we provide treatments, the way in which we provide care, and saying actually we really need to think about high quality care in the same way that we think about care for cancer or diabetes or cardiovascular disease. And we are so not there. And my final piece, and Rochelle knows this well, and I think you beautifully spoke about this, Paul, is around prevention. How do we keep ourselves mentally fit, healthy and well? And what does that look like, including staying connected to friends and family, looking after your sleep, your diet, your exercise, focusing on the things that actually fill your cup. And so a great girlfriend of mine, Paula Robinson, did a PhD on mental fitness. I think of it as, you know, the same way we think about physical fitness. It's something that you work on, and it takes time and energy. But once you get into a bit of a rhythm and a routine around it, that's a really important thing to do, because you can keep yourself mentally fit, healthy and well. And then if you are unwell, you can and must go and seek support and care, and you want to get the highest quality care.
Well said. Lillian.
Hi, everyone. It's been great hearing about Rochelle and Jane, and we're all on the same page. I'm your friendly clinical psychologist. I've been working in mental health for over 20 years in a variety of settings, including public mental health and in universities and also workplaces. And now I'm in private practice as well. And So I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people to both treat mental health conditions and also to help improve and enhance their mental health and well-being. The other things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that these mental health skills and strategies are accessible and affordable for everyone. So I also provide online self-help resources and courses through a mental health portal called Skills for Life, with a focus currently on assisting people with anxiety and stress and sleep issues. But yeah, I think that we need to cater for different people and different learning styles and different modes of offering services. And technology is obviously one of the areas where we're going to be doing this. So.
Thank you. And well said there, because I think, you know, we talk about anxiety and stresses, and obviously the budget was handed down last night, and there's a lot of people doing it tough with the increased cost of living. You know, they're always interviewing people. Even this morning on the news, I was watching that, and yeah, people are doing it tough, and we don't know where we're going to go. So, and I know there's a lot of people that also mentioned that I don't know if I can afford that. So what you just mentioned then is probably quite critical, into the point where, yeah, going to see a clinical psychologist can be quite expensive. So those resources are fantastic, and that's great to hear. Lillian, I might stick with you as a clinical psychologist. Sort of, are you okay to talk about the different types of mental health challenges that people are facing at present?
Of course. And I think you've already mentioned that the reality is that almost half of us are going to experience a psychological disorder in our lifetime. And, you know, 20% of us have experienced a mental health condition in the last year. So it is really important to talk about mental health given these rates. And of course, the rates are much higher among young people, and they're actually much higher among Australian workers as well. So, you know, really the most common mental health conditions are anxiety disorders, firstly, and then mood disorders like depression, for instance, and then followed by substance use disorders. So those are the most common. But as we know, we've been going through a lot over the last few years, a lot of challenges, unusual challenges. And that has meant that anxiety and depressive symptoms have spiked pretty much across the world. So the mental health challenges that we're seeing include issues like people feeling exhausted and burnt out from all the change and the uncertainty that we've had to endure, high levels of stress caused by the impact that the pandemic has had on our work lives and our home lives, people struggling with worry about the future. That includes the financial distress that you're talking about. And of course, these issues have knock-on effects, including, you know, stress-related physical conditions, problems sleeping, financial distress, as you discussed, and relationship difficulties too. So there's quite a lot on the plate for people at the moment.
Look, I think people underrate, and I'm happy for anyone to jump in there and talk about this as well. I think people underrate sleep a lot. You know, you know, and certainly the stuff that I've worked on myself, the sleep element, as you just mentioned, then is so critical to making sure that we are having quality sleep. And
Paul, I might jump in there. You met Shanta last night. He chairs the Sleep Health Foundation. It is a fabulous resource with information for people about sleep hygiene. And I think, Lillian, you talked about it, the fact that, you know, financial stress, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're not sleeping, so you're not getting enough sleep. It adds to your anxiety levels. And we saw this in veterans in the transition study. Often the things that were starting to go pear-shaped to begin with were sleep. And if you think about prevention, you think about how you prevent poor mental health, then sleep becomes such a critical factor to it. But from a resource perspective, Sleep Health Foundation has some fabulous information, resources, ways to get yourself, I mean, when you get into that cycle, it's hard to get yourself out of that cycle. And so trying to understand how you make sure that you reset your clock, that you get out in the sunshine, that you make sure you're exhausted when you go to bed, that you make sure that you set yourself up so that your computer's not on and your phone's not on. And, you know, it's kind of simple, but not really, because often we get into bad habits about sleep. And I can see that in my kids, you know, we sort of set rules of there are no devices in the bedroom, and what do? Take their phones into the bedroom. So it's just this ongoing conversation and challenge about how you actually get balance and what that balance looks like in your life.
Absolutely. And I also, there's such a, strong relationship between anxiety and worry and stress and sleep difficulties. And often it is worries that are keeping us up at night or waking us up in the middle of the night. And so being able to kind of manage your anxiety or your worries effectively is really important to kind of getting that sleep routine back on track.
Yeah.
Do-
I remember Reach Out used to have this rocket that was Scream It, Dream It. It was based on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, which Lillian, you'll know incredibly well. But it was, if you've got a problem, write it down and send it off in a rocket. And that's such a simple thing again to say, but just rather than sitting there ruminating about it, set your worry time, work out when you're going to worry, give yourself some space for it, go for a walk. That just is a simple CBT skill that that you can use at any time.
It absolutely is. I actually call that, it's called worry time a lot of times. I call it contain your brain.
Yeah,
And,
better.
I'm actually in the process of developing an app related to that strategy. So it's writing your worries down as they occur, but setting a worry time in place to process them, and then helping people process them really effectively so that you're using that time as effectively as possible. And so they're not plaguing you at all hours of the day, and they're definitely not plaguing you when you're trying to sleep.
Yeah, well said. I think that's the challenge is that, and that's what's great. Both you two have just shared some really important things to everyone listening. And it's those little mechanisms that we need to have. And I know even Jane, you mentioned just before with the kids, and yes, the greatest challenge for all of us as parents is how do we keep our children off our devices? But it also starts with us. Yeah. So if we want to, they model us. And if we want to have positive change on their life, well, sometimes we need to change our life. So it's a funny thing that it's important for us to put our phones down, for us to have that time where at 9:30 at night, if you're going to bed at 10:30, I do it now. That's why I'm saying 9:30 at night, bang, it's away. And it actually turns itself off. So there's even smart apps out there now that turn it off for you. So you can't be interrupted. You can't go on it. And then my kids aren't saying, hang on, Dad, if it's okay for you to be on it, how come we can't be on it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel there's enough support out there? And I think, these, when we're talking about sort of mental health and anxiety and stress and all the financial worries that we've got to carry around on our shoulders nowadays, and the awareness is fantastic. We're about to come into November next week. And then of course we've got Men's Health with Movember. Do you think there's enough support out there? I'd love to hear everyone's comments.
I think from my perspective as a psychologist, there is a shortage of psychologists out there to meet the current need. And that means that waiting times can be really long for people who are seeking support. And that's obviously not ideal. And I suppose the other main issue is that even when there is support out there, that it's not often utilized because there is still that reluctance often for people to seek support. For instance, there are supports available in many workplaces like employee assistance programs, but they're extremely underutilized. And that might be, for a lot of reasons, like stigma is one. It might be concerns regarding privacy and confidentiality, doing something through the workplace or maybe through the human resources, or people and culture area of the workplace. It could also be just a lack of awareness of what's actually on offer. Because I do think that there are resources out there that are great that aren't being utilized because people just don't know about them. So part is like awareness, and part is, reducing stigma. And then part is, well, we are under-resourced in some areas, particularly in psychological treatment for all age ranges, but children in particular are having to wait a very long time to see someone, which is really unfortunate.
It's very true. Rochelle, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, look, I can answer it from the perspective and the personal experience of experiencing postnatal depression and looking for the resources. And one of the reasons why the Black Dog Institute is one of Emotions partners is because it was available, it was free, it was science-backed. So it wasn't just something I read online that sent me down a rabbit hole, but there were facts and information that was helpful. And I paid a lot of money to psychologists and psychiatrists to help me through a patch where, when you say, Lillian, that you're creating a free resource, it's so helpful to send that stuff out because it was money down the drain at the time. It was something where at the end of the day, it wasn't as helpful as I would have liked. But to answer your question, Paul, there has been, especially over the last 2 years, an improvement in what we're coming to learn about mental health. It's only at the beginning stages. When I look at physical health and what we're able to do for people now, it's unbelievable the progress we've made in saving people's lives. In mental health, we're still very much in that dark ages and coming to an understanding of what is real progress and helping people through these phases, because we're all mammals, and even whales and other mammals experience depression. It's just about circling around them, supporting them through. They do come out the other side. And now, yeah, like Lillian was saying, there's a real need for more support, but there's progress.
So I might finish the thought bubble here. And again, the bane of my existence has been the wastage, the duplication, and the resources thrown into mental health that actually are poor quality. And so back in 2015, we worked directly with the Mental Health Commission around how can you create a much more consolidated prevention right through to clinical care framework so that people actually can get the right support, the right care at the right time, and that they're not waiting until they're so unwell that they actually require a psychologist, which is what we're now seeing, which is why we've got calls for more psychologists. And so a part of that process was actually doing a co-design trip around Australia with people with lived experience, asking them, what is it that you need? So people like you, Rochelle, who experienced postnatal depression, people from cultural backgrounds who'd lived with bipolar disorder for their whole life. It was done with Jackie Crow, who's sadly since passed away. But what was common and constant was it's impossible to navigate the system. Even when we're in the system, the quality of the care is poor. And how do we know what is available when mental health, like everything, is really complex? And what might be good for anxiety may not be right for depression, may not be right for an eating disorder. And so off the back of that, and to the federal government's credit, they funded a resource called Head to Health, which brings together all of the resources from children, young people, right through to adults, including veteran care, that you can access online. It also is geospatially mapped, so you can see what's available in your local community. So I think we're still not great in mental health at coordinating our efforts. I think there's a lot of wastage, and I think one of the big pushes from a reform perspective is how do we actually create a system that's far more responsive to the needs of people, i.e. people like us, so that we do get the right care at the right time. And I think technology plays a major role in that, but you want to interface that with high quality clinical care. And our clinicians are burnt out just as the whole healthcare workforce is as well. So we've got this major challenge and conundrum, but if we get better at the coordination of it, then I think we'll start to see changes in that focus on prevention and then quality care.
I think those are excellent points, and just wanted to add that there is more than just the person with the mental health condition that needs support, and we are not very good at supporting the family and the friends and the loved ones around people. So that is a major gap, I think, in the services that we offer, and needs to be a gap that's
absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that.
Jane, let me just throw to you before you do have to take off. So as a
enjoying this so much, I don't want to go back to the boardroom. Oh, hopefully no one's listening.
Yes, from the boardroom point of view.
I reckon I can do another 15 minutes, Paul.
Okay, good. So let me throw to you anyway. So as a well-being, let's call it from a well-being perspective, that's your, you're an authority in well-being and helping people. And I think the great part about what you've been able to do, you just mentioned the Lifeline side as well. What does the path look like? I strongly believe that mindset plays a major part in all of that as well. But from your point of view, from that perspective, and you are an authority on purpose well-being, and how do you see that, and what's the path look like for people that are actually going through that, or maybe even family members that may be going through that? Sort of people might be online saying, yeah, look, my daughter She's 14 years of age, and there's signs there that how do we help them?
Yeah, so I might start with a question around wellbeing first and then talk to some of the resources. And I think we should make available to people, there's a list of resources, just from a young person's perspective. Reachout.com is probably one of the best. Their online wellbeing centre is a consolidation of all the apps and tools that young people can use. But I think if I answer the question first around wellbeing now has a bit of a connotation of, yoga and wellbeing days at work. And I think I want to start with the premise that wellbeing is not that. Wellbeing is actually holistically, how do we look after people's mental and physical health so that they are as well as they can be, even if they do live with a mental illness. And I think that's an important point to make, because you can have a mental illness and still be highly functional, have a fantastic job and be really productive. So we've really taken a systems level approach, which is how do you ensure that workplaces don't break people? So you're hearing increasingly this concept of psychological safety. What does it mean to be psychologically safe within a workplace? But then how do you create jobs that are more supportive of people? How do you not allow people to be bullied within workplaces? How do you not create job conflict? How do you design jobs so that people are comfortable and that we can get diversity of workforce into those jobs? So I come at it from a really big prevention angle. And again, to Rochelle's point around evidence, there's so much evidence out there about what works within a workplace, and yet we are hopeless at implementing it. The same can be said for schools. So, everyone's calling, we need more psychologists in schools, we need more programs in schools. I'm like, no, we don't. We need to create school environments that are more supportive of children and young people and teachers, so that teachers can do their job, which is to educate children and young people, and children and young people can build up their skills around resilience, which is again a bit of a buzzword, but coping skills, communication skills, managing stress, understanding that life isn't always sunshine and happiness, and that you are going to deal with complex issues, mum and dad breaking up, or your own relationship breakdown. The loss of a pet is traumatic for kids. I know with my kids, when our dog Indy died, it was traumatic. It was horrendous. But it was interesting watching Harry go to his mates and had a chat to Eli, which was one of his mates. And that was his sounding board. That was his support. So you kind of go, these are the conversations that we need to be having, not let's put more resource into it, because it's just like throwing, I don't know, it's like putting your finger in a dike and expecting it to not explode. So we've got to get much better at having these hard conversations about what works, what doesn't work. Let's get rid of the things that don't work. And I think, again, I come back to that clinical care. If we can't get that right, when people get into care, you've got one chance, and particularly men, if they don't like the person that they see, or they don't like the support that they're given, or it doesn't resonate with them, they will not come back. And that's, to me, the biggest tragedy, because that's where we see our suicide rates.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went on a diatribe. I didn't mean to.
No, that's good.
No, yeah, it's good. It was necessary, and you covered a lot of ground, especially how there's such a high percentage of preventable problems before we get to mental illness.
Right. The earlier you get.
What I do like as a positive, I do like the fact that more males, and you sort of mentioned last night, and we were around a good group of people last night, and I think there's more and more males that are more willing to talk about it. Certainly my dad would never have spoken about it. That generation would have never spoken about it. I think where there's more, I'll put myself in the young category, there's more young males now that are willing to talk about it and express it. And certainly the group of there's about 6 of us that are pretty tight knit. We're all happy to talk about it. And during the lockdowns, we all touch base with each other every Sunday night with a glass of wine, and we talk about things which males don't usually do.
Oh, it's definitely improving. I mean, I've even seen that in my practice. I have more male clients now than I used to in the past. They're coming in with, vulnerability, which they did less of it in the past. They tell me stories about how they've opened up conversations with their male friends now. And oh my gosh, so many people have similar issues, and I never knew, even though I've been friends with this person for 20 years. So I think that is improving. And I think also what's improving is the way that we parent our kids and how we talk to them about emotions and about stress and about worries. And, hopefully having like that trust from the beginning, like that your feelings and your thoughts are valid. And so they feel more comfortable talking to their families, which means that if there are issues that come up, that people are more aware of them more quickly and willing to seek help for them as well. And that's, bodes well for, future generations, I think.
Yeah, well said. Rochelle, I might just throw to you for a second, because it's probably, it's a nice little segue, I suppose, where you spoke about your personal tragedy that led you to what you're doing at present. And I know you mentioned the company Emotions, and we've mentioned that as well. And funnily enough, Lillian just mentioned it as well. But are you okay to go into a little bit more detail about that, and even share the journey where you had to explain that to your young son?
Yeah, and you've touched on something so powerful, where so many people who buy our products write either emails or reviews about the education for their children. It's the way the emotions chart began, and I started off our conversation with the 3,129 people who died from suicide, and our family experiencing just one of those people. And for every one person, there's 160 people estimated in their network who experiences these intense feelings. And I was left to explain to my toddler at the time, he was 2, the difference between disappointed and sad and angry and happy, and all these feelings that we were all going through this unbelievable roller coaster in the first few months, and even still today. And I was looking for a tool online, how to explain to my son, and also just something to soothe my own understanding of what was going on. And I couldn't find anything suitable, but a freelancer helped me draw up an emotions chart. So it had all these characters: happy, sad, disappointed, angry, all of them. They're about 19 in the end. And through explaining that to him, there was a therapeutic understanding, which, because it was so helpful for us, I wanted to get out into the world. And it was 2020, and there was no toilet paper on the shelves, and it just, the ideas came together like that. Wrap this chart in the toilet, around the toilet paper, around hand paper towels, send it out on a commercial basis, help people have that same feeling. And it surprisingly worked much better than I could have ever expected. And to the point where even today, 2 years on, when I speak to him as his mother and I realize he's angry, or I realize he's sad, the whole conversation flips when he turns around and goes, "I'm not angry, Mummy, I'm embarrassed." And then, there's a really different shift in how we address things because of this emotions chart. It's a complex environment, mental health. By no means can I say it's the end result that we're looking for, which is real change, but it's nice to sit here with the experts to hear how you guys can pick up when someone's identified they're actually very embarrassed, they're not angry.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like such a basic thing, but a lot of people haven't thought to identify their feeling and name their feeling, which can be a really important step to validating themselves, and for also other people understanding what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And I might jump in, Paul, on that one as well, because I think, and the reason I'm so supportive of Rochelle's work is because I think emotions are absolutely fundamental to who we are as human beings, and being able to name them is fundamental. So we don't want to pathologize emotions. Like they make us tick, they make us get up in the morning, they make us, do all the things that we do. And I think that's a really important thing to say, that mental illness is different to mental health. And that's why I like the idea of the mental fitness model, where you say, actually, it's really important that we talk about our emotions, because a lot of the work, and particularly with men, and this is old research now, but it takes men 15 years before they actually put their hand up to get any help. That was back in the 90s, that study. And what was really obvious from that is that the feelings were there. They were often masked by anger, or they were masked by self-soothing through alcohol or drugs. And so finally something was a catalyst that went, 15 years on, I need to get some support for this. But 15 years is a long time to be dealing with issues without actually putting your hand up and saying, actually, there's something not quite right, or my relationship's broken down, or, like actually identifying some of those trigger points before you end up with a mental illness. And that to me is fundamental to life. We physically look after ourselves. We go running, we go to the gym, we eat healthy food, we take ourselves to the beauticians, all of that stuff. But mentally, we don't seem to think of it in that way. And I think we want to make sure we don't pathologize everything. And this is what I'm trying to get my kids to think about. They don't want to be anxious. And we're seeing this massive increase in anxiety. And you're sort of saying, well, anxiety is good at a particular point in time. It helps you function. So what we want to do is really make sure that we make a clear distinction between mental health and well-being. This is everyday life and you have to practice it, and it's important, versus actually I do need to go and see a psychologist or get some help from a professional so that I can deal with what might become a mental illness. And I think the financial one, which you talk about a lot, is often a trigger point for when people start to get really anxious about what's going on. And we can see this. And so even just going to see someone who can help you with your finances, you don't need to go and see a psychologist. You can actually get that bit sorted with that person. So sort of working out, who do I need to speak to help me get through what is going on in my life at this particular point in time?
Totally agree, Jane. And I think that it's such an important message for people to understand it. It's okay not to be happy all the time. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you if you have distressing feelings or if you have challenges in your life. And all of our emotions have a function, and we just need to know what they're trying to tell us to work out what that function is, and then choose behaviors or responses that are as helpful and as healthy as possible. And I think that's really where the skills development can be. It's kind of understanding emotion, accepting our emotions for what they are, kind of identifying what the function of those emotions are, and then learning how to respond in ways that are helpful.
Are there, we've spoken about, like, let's say depression or anxiety, and even I think to all of us that may have children going through VCE, I believe the first exam is on today, so English. So interesting that, there would be a bit of anxiety and stress around that. Are there signs that we should be looking out for, whether it be with our family or our friends?
Absolutely. I mean, the early signs can really include things like feeling tired all the time, worrying more than usual, muscle tension. There might be physical signs like that, having trouble sleeping. Often people start wanting to avoid things a lot, withdrawing from others. So those can be some of the earlier signs. Often those earlier signs can be ignored or not detected. So if you let things go a little bit longer, then you might find that there are more significant changes that occur to your thoughts and your feelings and your physical condition and your behavior. So things like in regard to thoughts, like you might become more pessimistic or self-critical, or more cynical. You might be even more preoccupied by worries or beliefs, about that have to do with failure or feelings of worthlessness. You might find it really hard to concentrate or focus or make decisions. And in extreme cases, you might feel really hopeless and want to die and have thoughts around that. And in terms of feelings, you might have all the same feelings, but they're more intense. They might pop up out of proportion according to like what's actually going on in your life. Or you might notice that you can't calm down. You're finding it really hard to relieve your distress, and it's lasting for a long time. And psychologists would say if it's lasting 2 weeks or longer, like 2 weeks is a good kind of amount to say, you need to see someone, unless you're having, accompanying suicidal ideation or self-harm, which is when you want to seek immediate assistance.
Yes.
If you're experiencing distress and it doesn't kind of alleviate within 1 or 2 weeks, then I would be seeking assistance for that. And of course, there are physical symptoms that people experience as well. You get heart racing, you might feel sick more often, have changes to your appetite or your sleep, or feel really restless or agitated. And then the things that people can see, like you might see them in yourself or other people, not functioning really well at work or school or at home or in your relationships, or feeling really unmotivated or drinking more or using licenses to cope and develop things, as Jane had alluded to before.
Yeah. And in those situations where you might see those signs, and you mentioned just then, Lillian, it could be time to get some more professional help, but we sometimes also know certain people aren't going to go and do that, while more and more are doing it. It's fantastic to hear that. And those numbers that you mentioned before, there's more and more men, but there's also more and more people that sort of won't want to put themselves out there. So what can we do? And there's always, I know there's the Are You Okay Day. I want to talk about that very soon. And there's things that you can obviously ask. What would you suggest that we could do if we see those signs? There's people on the line right now. Is it just a matter of just having a conversation and asking people that next layer of question?
Yeah, I think it is important to open those conversations up. If you are noticing something, take a person aside, make sure it's convenient for them, it's private for both of you, and that you actually have the time to listen to what's actually going on for that person. That's really important. And ask how they are, or let them know what you've noticed, that you've noticed some changes and you're wondering if there's anything that you can do to support them. But you don't have to put the pressure on yourself to fix or solve whatever problems that they discuss with you. I think a lot of people are reluctant to ask the question because they're nervous about not being, they don't know what to do, and they don't maybe have the confidence to deal with whatever problems that person brings up. And it causes that stress. And when we feel stressed or anxious, we want to avoid, and that's just a natural response for us. So I think the more we practice asking the question and just listening to someone, just validating what their experience is, and then not necessarily knowing the answers, but saying like, I'll be here to help you find out what the supports are, what we can do. Those are.
Sorry, Paul, I'm going to have to go because I am now.
All good.
But I just wanted to back up what Lillian has just said, because I think we're hopeless. People ask, are you okay? And they're, yeah, I'm fine. Of course I'm fine. My relationship's broken down. I've fallen over and broken my arm. I've lost my job. Yeah, fine. So I think we need to do more than just ask, are you okay? And I know you're going to talk about that, but two things that stand out for me, and they're very practical, and I can't even remember who I learned this from, but someone, or probably a psychologist, Michael Cargregor it might have been, is to actually sit down with your kids and say to them, let's have a look at reachout.com, because that normalizes the conversation about mental health and wellbeing. Or let's have a look at Headspace, or the Together AI app is a great conversation starter. From an adult's point of view, I still think, let's ask, have you had a look at Head to Health? And everybody should know Head to Health is a government portal that you can go to, and it gives you every resource that's ever been created from the government. Like, that is a resource created by lived experience people. And so you feel like there's that next step to the practical things. Swiss 8's another great one. Adrian Sutter, a mate of mine, who's a veteran. He's a military guy. He is the toughest, most switched on guy in the world, and yet he struggled with his own mental health and wellbeing. So they created Swiss 8 around mates and routine, and how do you actually keep yourself mentally fit and well, which is what they used to do in the military. And he tells a terrific story about the fact that you lose those skills as you transition out, but you can regain them. And so, if there are men listening, Swiss 8 is probably one of the best ones, because it's actually created by guys for guys, and is about routine and is about tribe. And I think we probably need to get really practical and pragmatic about, let's have the conversation, yes, but then let's have the next bit, which is, actually, I've noticed that you're drinking 15 bottles of wine, or I've noticed that, you come to the drinks after work and, you stay out until 6 a.m. in the morning, or whatever it might be. Like, yes. Let's get practical about it, because I think just asking, are you okay? Not enough. Now, if someone hasn't called you or returned your call, you assume they're either ghosting you or there's something going wrong. So, really reach out to people and really take that time. And even when they do push you away, all you can say is, actually, I'm here for you. And if you don't want to talk to me about it, that's fine, but I am here. And active listening is so underrated. We don't need to be solving the problem, but we do need to be listening to what's going on, and then saying, okay, let's take baby steps on this. Even if you just do one thing, let's just do that one thing. It doesn't need to be, go to the psychologist or go to a psychiatrist and talk. It can be a simple thing. And I think those websites that I've just mentioned give you some of those tools, maybe if you're not ready to go and speak to someone.
So Swiss 8, reachout.com.
Head to Health.
Head to Health.
Yeah, and there's a ton that and through that there's so many resources, but it's just 3 simple ones that are consolidators of all of that information. And Rochelle will talk about Lifeline and Black Dog and Beyond Blue, but they're very practical tools on those websites.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for giving us more than what we thought we would get.
I'll be in trouble at the board. But anyway, I will see you guys back in Melbourne.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Bye, Jane.
There, Jane.
Bye.
Now, I'm just going to throw to some questions as we come to this, and we'll do some sort of wrap up very quickly, but I thought I'll come to some questions that we've been thrown at. What are some things we can implement in the workplace to assist people with mental well-being? Do mental health days work? Now, I think the good part is that more and more workplaces, and even in my show last week where I spoke to the COO of Lloyd's, and they've got a really, really good program. And if anyone's watching this, you would have heard the key things that they put in terms of their workplace and their culture aspect. Everything they make their decisions is based on people first. So one of the things that Lee Hames spoke about was people first, culture second, money third. So everything comes back to our people. So I'll go back to the question. What are some of the things we can implement in the workplace to assist people with mental well-being? Do mental health days work?
Well, there are kind of 3 prongs to this, I think. The first thing that workplaces need to focus on is just general promotion of mental health and well-being. Now, whether that's a mental health day or having, a professional come in and talk about anxiety or stress related skills, or offer e-learning courses that help people with sleep or stress or anxiety. There are a number of things that people can do for that. I think the most important thing is understand your organization, the people that work for you, and what are the pain points for the people that work for you? Like what are the main things that stress them out? Like ask your employees what's concerning them, whether it's personal things that are concerning them or workplace issues that are concerning them. And then you can actually have more targeted interventions that help people, in a more strategic and effective way. So that's one. And the other thing that's really important with that is that the leaders of the organization have to value mental health genuinely. Because if the employees don't think that they value mental health, whether it's perception or real, then any intervention's probably not going to have an impact or the impact that you're wanting.
Yeah, well said.
So that's one prong. The second prong would be protecting people from psychological risk. Lots of workplaces, depending on where you work, right? There might be different risks in hospitality than there are for entertainment, than there are for accountants, but really understanding what those are and preventing them from occurring. And that's an obligation, I think, for workplaces now. So, it just has to be done. And of course, we want it to be done. And then the third thing is responding effectively when mental health issues arise. So having those procedures and policies in place and making sure that the employees know about them, because you might have the policies, but you haven't told anybody about them. So someone's having an issue, they don't know who to talk to, they don't know where to go, they don't know about the EAP program, what that involves, how to access it. And if you don't know, then you're not going to get the support that you need. So I think that those are the 3 areas that workplaces really need to focus on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also touching on that leadership perspective, when the leadership set the culture that they care, it shows. And one of the things that we've noticed a lot, there's a big drive in male-dominated industries right now, because, for example, construction, a person working in the construction industry has 6 times the chance of dying from suicide than if it was an accident at work. And one of the big construction companies, Kane, just started ordering from us to put our products in the bathrooms at all the construction sites because of maybe their staff and again, male-dominated industry aren't willing to talk as much. They're not as open to the communication side, but having the roles with the logos of help that is available is a message that is directly going to their team from leadership that they support, and they offer that assistance. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to come around it. And these Are You Okay days and these push-up challenges for 3 weeks. They're very powerful in the sense that they are showing, they're rebooting the conversation. So they're like Mother's Day and Father's Day, in my opinion. We don't only love our family one day a year, but they need to be working with everyday problem solving, yes, organizations and people, and not just having them on their own.
Yeah, well said. And if anyone wants to go and listen to Lee Hames last week, it's up on PPE TV. So if you want to type that into your YouTube, the recording of last week shows up there. And some of the stuff Lee shared about how they focus on people first, and therefore it's not a blanket approach. It is an individual approach. Sometimes there's some really good programs out there, some really good apps. There's the guys at Everperform that do some really good stuff now to pulse, send out questions just to get a first gauge about how people are feeling. Then you can have that deeper conversation if you need to have that deeper conversation as a leader. So it's a great point, Rochelle, but there's key things out there that can help people to get deeper into those conversations. So well said. Another question. There are times when I've referred to someone and they've come back and said the therapist did not tell me what to do.
Right. So the question is, why didn't they tell them what to do? Look, I think when someone says that, I think that can kind of signal that there wasn't a really good rapport developed with that person, between the person and the therapist. I think when I see people for the first time, it's important to first develop that relationship to really and gain an understanding of what that person is there for and what they're wanting out of seeing you, so that you are delivering on what they think, what they want the goals for therapy to be. Sometimes though, also it can take time for the strategies and the skills to be part of the session. Like first it's kind of getting to know the person, what are the issues, developing a plan. Sometimes that can take 1 or 2 sessions. What I like to do though, is I do like to give people a strategy to go home with on the first day, even if it's just a simple thing, so that people do feel like they're starting on the way towards better health and better mental health and better well-being. So it can be frustrating to wait 1 or 2 sessions, especially if you've already waited 6 or 8 weeks or 12 weeks to even see someone in the first place. Yeah. Yeah. So one, I would say it's really important to develop a really good rapport with whoever you're seeing. Maybe give that a chance before you're like, no, this person isn't for me. But if you don't feel like you're confident in the person you're seeing, or you don't trust them, or you don't click with them, and feel comfortable with them, then it might be worth seeking out someone different, just like you might seek out a different GP if you were unhappy with, what a GP did with you. So the problem with therapists though, is that because of the long waiting times, it means you're waiting 3 months to see somebody, and then, they're not really who you think is going to help you best. And then you have to wait, potentially another 3 months. So that's not really ideal. So there are a lot of problems inherent in the process at the moment. No,
it's very true. It's very true. And you're right in terms of, I know we waited 6 months to see a child psych, so it's challenging. And then you go, you totally even forget that you had the appointment. So it's like, okay. And of course, if you miss that, bang, you're gone for another 6 months.
Exactly.
So it's one of the challenges that we do face. I'll ask a question in closing, because we've got 5 minutes before we got to close up. And this is, it's probably, Rochelle, you touched on it before as well. And I'm going to touch on it, because while Are You Okay is good, I'm sort of not okay with it. So I want to raise the flag and say, while it's good and I agree with it, I believe that it doesn't need to be for one day, and I think that's the whole thing is, are you okay today? And the kids are great. They come home and they've done some great things, but I believe we need to expand on it. I believe we need to continue to shine a light on asking better questions certainly off our close friends. And unfortunately, COVID sort of threw us into a mix where we didn't even see them. So now we're coming out. Some still are, like I am. I haven't gone back to the office. I'm still working from home. But there's elements there that we need to continually search for, not just on one day, for 365 days of the year, sometimes 366. What's your comments in closing, ladies, to some of the key things, in terms of shining a light on the problem and finding the solutions? Comments before we go to any other questions that the audience may have.
Well, I think that Rochelle, I'm going to what Rochelle has already said. I think that it's important for campaigns like Are You Okay and Mental Health Day and Mental Health Month to highlight these issues and to encourage us to have conversations and support each other. And because with that increased awareness and common understanding and practicing the skills just to talk to each other and really listen, this is what's going to build our confidence to keep doing things beyond the campaigns. So I think the more that we promote mental health and well-being and we protect each other from psychological risk and to mental health issues when they arise, the better off we will all be.
Well said. Rochelle?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one because I take my hat off to them. They've helped reduce the stigma. They've helped open up the conversations. They've given people a really easy to remember, are you okay? They've had campaigns year on year to improve on that, what to say if they're not okay, or you don't have to say anything. And every year they slightly change it, which is a bite-sized understanding for all of us in our busy lives to take on board. And then at the same time, they've established a very strong foundation for us all to develop. And that's what we need to do. And it's our responsibility now to make it an everyday change of mindset, develop the science around it, and change the future for our friends, our family, for the next generation. So I sit on the fence. I hate to say it. I love it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I'm really proud to say that people are taking that opportunity and really running with it and changing things. And now men talk more openly and children have more vocabulary. And so, yeah.
Got a quick question here. Is it unethical to see a friend who is a registered psychologist?
Yes.
Okay.
Clear. Clear answer.
Easy answer.
A friend is a friend, a psychologist is a psychologist. They're separate.
Okay, good. If you've got any other questions, please throw them in. We're probably going to wrap up in about a minute's time. So certainly appreciate, obviously Jane had to run away, but certainly to Lillian and to Rochelle, thank you. Certainly what we've been able to do here and continue to shine this light, continue to talk about it, certainly in this really important month that, and again, next week becomes another important month as we move into men's mental health with Movember as well. So let me just quickly check if we've got any other questions. Nothing else coming through.
Paul, I just want to add to what I just said. That a lot of people who I'm friends with will ask me for referrals to psychologists. So if you do have a friend who's a psychologist, there would be a very good resource to find.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. No more questions coming through. No, it looks pretty good there. So Rochelle, Lillian, thank you so much. Jane, if you're watching this back on replay, thank you very much. Again, I know how difficult it is because you're running your practice, and Rochelle, you are super busy. And Jane's, I wouldn't even know, Jane was heading to Brisbane last night. So for us to find the time in your busy days, it's been fantastic. And certainly the comments, the thoughts, the advice, certainly, hopefully all of you that are listening to this and watching this can take that away. And certainly even the resources, I look forward to looking at a couple of those and talking to my boys about that tonight when they come home from school, because we always, there's no devices in this house during the day or during the nights, during the week, should I say, only on the weekends. There's no TV. When we're sitting around the dinner table, we talk about our day and we talk about what we learned for the day, and that actually raises conversation. And I really like that. So I'm going to go to reachout.com and have a look at that as well and talk to them about that tonight, which I'm looking forward to. To all of you that have joined us, thank you. Massive thank you. Obviously, without you guys, we do this for you guys. So hopefully we've been able to empower you with a little bit of resources, knowledge, advice, but anything, just talk about it. And I think that's really That's really important. So I hope this has helped. Rochelle, Lillian, thank you again.
Thanks
very
again.
much.
My pleasure.
Okay.
And signing off till I see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.